All right, folks. I can't honestly say that every single Southerner is a POS, but per capita, yeah, the Southerners pretty much got the whole rest of the country beat. The whole rest of the country beat. When it comes to being shady, they got the whole rest of the country beat. When it comes to playing victim, they got the whole rest of the country beat. When it comes to sticking to your guns, kind of like that Shaggy song, wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. No matter how many times you say that, it's not going to make it true. Now, I'm going to go over past history, far in the past, because it does affect what's happening today, no matter how much you want to pretend that it doesn't. You don't need to live in the past. You know, it is true that I have never owned a slave. It is true that no black man that I have ever known has ever picked cotton for me. However, just because it was fought way the hell back in the 1800s doesn't mean that the choices, decisions, and bad lawmaking that was meant specifically to harm black people does not still have an effect today. Matter of fact, that decision to enact the 13th Amendment, the amendment that made it legal, it made slavery legal across the entire country. Now, why is that? Well, because the 13th Amendment makes it legal for state-run slavery. Now, a lot of y'all from the South want to spout a bunch of ignorance. You don't even know your own goddamn history. That flag that y'all keep trying to press upon us is a symbol of racism. Do you know what started the Civil War? It wasn't Harper's Ferry. I tell you that. Abraham Lincoln, after years and years and years of the South using the Bible as their excuse why it's okay to own slaves. See, this is why God does not belong in schools, does not belong in politics. God does not belong. The Bible is not an acceptable rule book. These Southerners, even though the argument about slavery, it started before we were even our own country. The Declaration of Independence, they argued about whether or not black people should be free. But it wasn't just black people, it was also Irish. Yes, the British owned Irish slaves and sent them over here. But also, something you guys don't want to hear is that also at that time, the pirates in Algiers were stealing American shipping, French shipping, English shipping. And it wasn't even the shipping that they were after, it was the people on board for slavery. Now, I also want you to understand that at this point in time, 60% of the sailors in the United States Navy are black. At the Battle of Lake Erie in 1812, where British and American ships are shooting each other, they literally built those ships within sight of each other. It was a sandbar that they had to specially build ships to be able to get over that sandbar. Ships like the Niagara. Y'all have heard of Hazard Perry, correct? Yeah, that's the Battle of Lake Erie, 1812. That battle was fought between two nations over a third nation who was stealing so many of their human beings that the British went, we don't have enough sailors to fight these guys. And the Americans went, we don't have the sailors or the ships to fight these guys. And the British went, well, Americans speak English, we'll go steal them off their ships. So the British did exactly what the Algerian pirates were doing, forcing people into slave labor. And it wasn't a matter of color. It didn't matter if you were white or black. The Algerians didn't fucking care. The English didn't fucking care. You know, sir, I'm 40 years old. All my life I've been told I'm stupid, ignorant, toothless, etc. From the literal Yankee trash. You call us, oh, another one of these little bitches. You call us shady. Well, that, sir, is term meaning dishonest people are worldwide. That's right, dishonest people are worldwide. But y'all in the South have a way of fucking faking shit. Like, the Civil War was literally fought over what? The right to own human beings. Then you guys want special rights within the United States. Let me explain something to you. In a fair and equal election, Abraham Lincoln won that election specifically because of his stance on slavery. Matter of fact, as a lawyer, he was completely unknown until he started fighting against slavery. And that is literally the platform that he rode right into the presidency. Did you know that Southerners took part in that vote too? Did you know that Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, they voted? Their people voted, and they fucking lost, and they were sore fucking losers, and they are still sore fucking losers who want to blame everybody else because they got their asses kicked because they're pieces of shit. Where are most of these videos of black people being murdered by police who are escalating situations coming from? %80 are from the great state of Virginia and South. Now, I have been to California. And you know what? In California, anybody can be a manager. In California, anyone can end up doing the grunt work. Do you know how fucking ashamed I was of this country? In 2016, when I went to Virginia, I saw how beautiful it was there. And I go into the Walmart, and all of the yellow vests are white people. All of the managers are white people. All of them. And all of the workers are black people or mentally disabled people. When I worked out of Labor Ready, I was literally the only white guy working out of Labor Ready. We were sent to North Carolina to clean up Hurricane Matthew. You're welcome, you lazy ass, bitch ass fucking Southerners. That's right. When Hurricane Matthew came through, while you guys were sitting there taking pictures of us working, you North Carolina folks, a bunch of white North Carolina folks, and I'm eating lunch with these folks. Not the white ones, that's all the managers. I didn't show up with the managers. Just like every other time that I worked out of Labor Ready in Colorado or elsewhere. I ate with the people that I showed up with. Now, mind you, I'm not actually looking at what this fucking asshat is typing because I don't give a holy fucking goddamn. The whole South is full of liars and fakes. Now, let's start off with the Confederate flag. That is not a Confederate flag or the Confederate flag. That is a regimental standard. Do you know the difference? A regimental standard is used to signify a specific regiment so that the generals sitting way the fuck back like cowards, can tell who it is that they're telling to go where. And there are two regimental standards. There is one right next to the general, and there is one right with the regiment. And when the one at the general moves, then the one with the regiment copies that movement and it tells the rest of the troops what to do. Why is that? Because battles are fucking loud. Gunshots are loud. Cannon fire is loud. And the screaming of dying men is loud. In the South, unlike the North, in the North, most of those men fighting were volunteers. How many in the South were volunteers? By the end of the war, none of them. None of them. Most of these people didn't ever own a slave in their lifetime. Some of them, poor white people who were forced to go kill other white people because the upper echelon wanted to own human beings. And they didn't give a shit about white lives any more than they gave a shit about black lives. Not then and not now. I've been all over this country. I've seen racism all over this country. But you know what? The South is just racism. Their entire culture is racism. A bunch of cowards. These fuckers know that running around slandering people and making bad judgment calls based on your hatred of them, they know that it destroys people's lives. They also know that they can magically justify it by saying bless her heart or bless his heart afterwards. Bless his heart. He is such a fucking moron, bless his heart. God, he married an awful, god-awful, ugly woman. Bless his heart. The South is full of more superficial human beings per capita than anywhere else in the United States. The entire South is saturated that way with disgusting animals. Yes, these are animals. Human beings don't do these things to other human beings and then make excuses. Somebody else is typing. Why are you so mad, Georgia? LOL, you gotta do is click off. Oh, he's typing the Georgia Ridge Runner. I'm not sure how many of y'all are familiar with the term peckerwood. I'm not actually going to explain that one to you. If you're a decent person and you actually give a shit about this fight, about equal rights, you'll look up the term peckerwood. Peckerwood. And it's not a dick. Although, I guess as modern slang goes, they really are dicks. Now, let's start off before Harper's theory. Matter of fact, let's start off before the election ever took place for Abraham Lincoln. After that, we're going to get to the chain gangs and homelessness and Adolf Hitler taking many of his great ideas from the South and their chain gangs and the laws and rules and regulations that they set up specifically to make sure that they could retaliate against the black people that they blamed for losing the war. How many Southerners owned slaves before the Civil War? What percentage of Southern white people owned slaves? Is it 100%? No, not even close. Let's cut that in half. Is it 50%? No, not even close. Let's cut that in half. Is it 25%? No, still not even fucking close. Let's cut it in half again. 12 and a half. We're starting to almost get close. Now, I am staring directly at myself on this screen, so I don't have to see racist asshat bitch motherfucker over here typing his bullshit. Is this happening more to black people than to other people nationwide? No! Absolutely not. From Virginia South? Hell's motherfucking yes. And don't get me wrong, some of these high-profile deaths have been from places like Chicago. That's not the South. Well, the majority of it happens in the South. Does that mean that all of it's going to happen in the South? No. No, it doesn't. But in the South, it is very segregated to this day. And I mean segregated as in, all right, we are aware that there aren't signs up everywhere that say no colored people. But we understand that we're colored and this is not a colored establishment, so it's not a good idea to go in. I got to see this with my own two eyes. Now, imagine the culture shock of that. For me, moving here to Chapel, Nebraska at 15 after growing up with mostly minorities in the system, that was culture shock too. Holy shit, here I am stuck in Chapel, Nebraska, where they blame everything on blacks and Mexicans, and there aren't any. And by the way, Chapel, Nebraska isn't even part of the South. It's part of the Bible Belt. I don't know what this asshole is typing, but it's telling me the message is held for review. We're going to show it. We're going to let this fucking cunt rag type whatever the fuck he wants. The lazy ass fucking bitches of the South. Yeah. While the North went, hey, we're going to build ourselves an actual economy that is not entirely dependent on owning people as property. The South could have gone that route. The French gave them that option. The British gave them that option. Matter of fact, the French and the British both would have been willing to join the side of the South to help them become their own independent nation. This would have been the first time that the French and the English had ever done that. How long did we have to wait for that to actually happen? We had to wait until World War I, didn't we? About 30 years or so, close to 30 years, after the Civil War ended. Yay! Now, the majority of the reason that Southerners are such fucking cowards is God. It's not that God did these things. It's that Southerners, just like most people that I know, want to twist whatever is in that book to hate who they hate, to justify their sins. Meanwhile, when somebody else commits that very same sin, that other person is a terrible person. Because you're not going to use that same scripture for them, are you? You're not going to twist it the way that you twisted it for you, are you? No, the fuck you're not. Now, elsewhere in the world, we got lots of people that we can hate on. But in the South, y'all seem to be stuck on the fact that you got your fucking asses kicked. And then you want this flag that, first of all, was not a flag that represented any nation ever on earth. Ever. You want to know what the Confederate flag looked like? You type Confederate flag. Now, some of it's going to put up that, well, there was actually two different regiments that had that flag. One of them was from Tennessee. Or not that exact flag, but very similar. Now, every time I see something over here that's got two little squares, I know that out of my periphery, who it is that's typing, that he is cursing. He's probably being racist. I don't fucking care. The way I look at it, the more of an asshole he is, the more of a bitch he is, the more of a racist he is, and the more excuses he makes, the more he proves my motherfucking point. Kool-Aid Jimmy, maybe you should have actually paid attention. I'm going to show you something here. Oh, yeah, Georgia is definitely a bitch. This is Natalie Bollinger. This is her mother. This is her stepmother. This is her twin sister. Who was I seeing in Virginia? Boom, boom, boom. And who did I talk to while I was in Virginia? Boom. People who want to fly that flag that does represent racism. And here's why. First of all, because at least 3 states, before the election even started, said that if President Lincoln won, they were going to secede from the Union. Guess what? At least 2 states had already seceded from the Union after the vote. In between the time that the vote took place and the Southern folks obviously lost, Southern people were voting for Abraham Lincoln because most Southern people were broke. Most Southern people at the time were not much better off than the slaves. But yeah, after losing the war, pretty much everybody took part in that. The thousands of people who were all black, who were hung from telephone poles all the way to Charleston. And do we get to hear about that or read about that in our history books? No, the fuck we don't. Southerners always make the excuse, it's about states' rights. Bitch, you know goddamn well that literally the only right that you were talking about was the right to take away another human being's human rights. Oh yeah, you guys were totally in the right about that, fucking weren't you? Now, meanwhile, we have to listen to this racial divide from a bunch of racist black people and a bunch of racist white people and a bunch of other ethnicities that are racist as fuck. Now, each one of these groups does exactly the same thing. Black Lives Matters is literally doing the same thing that the KKK does. The KKK goes, well, look at this white guy and what happened to him. And then look at what these black people are doing. So these white racist Southerners are going to blame all black people because of something that they heard, or because they see 1 or 2 black people who actually did something wrong, or because they have 30 or 40 things that happen where they're lied to and told that this black person did something wrong. I just watched 6 different videos of a shooting where a man supposedly had a gun in his left pocket. There is no gun. I mean, there are guns. There's the guns that they shot him with. They were threatening to murder him within 30 seconds of talking to him and had murdered him within a minute of that. They kept on telling him to put his hands on the hood, and he kept on putting his hands on the hood, and they kept on grabbing him and pushing him. Now, what state did that happen in? This is how the Black Lives Matters movement got started. 3 men, all murdered in the same way, in the South, around the same time, with the exception of the man who was choked to death in Chicago for a pack of fucking goddamn cigarettes. And then you racist ass Southerners, you want to say, oh, well, that flag doesn't have anything to do with racism. We need to glorify these American soldiers. No, they were not American soldiers. They were fucking traitors. They left the Union. They killed American citizens, both civilians and military personnel, as traitors. And you want special fucking rights for being traitors. Are you out of your goddamn mind? You want to be able to lock people up for being the wrong goddamn color because the whole South is now racist. Before the Civil War, was the whole South racist? No, they weren't. Most of those Southern folks fought in that war because they fucking had to. They didn't ask to secede from the Union. A bunch of rich motherfucking slave owners were in charge and they made that decision. And a bunch of innocent white people had to go along with it or be killed themselves. Now, Black Lives Matters, they keep missing something, and I'm going to also show you an example of how these racist white folks are doing the same thing. Let me explain something to you. Anybody who is not white, especially if you are black, especially if you are in the South, but regardless, no matter where you are in this country, I want you to understand that 600,000 Americans died for your right to be free. 600,000. Most of these people were white. We want to pretend that black people weren't allowed to fight in wars until the Civil War. And then we want to pretend that they weren't allowed to fight until World War I. And then we pretend they weren't allowed to fight until World War II. And then we pretend that they weren't allowed to fight until Vietnam. No, black people have been a part of our fighting boys and girls in uniform since the very fucking beginning. And you want to tell them how much they owe these Southern soldiers who died to make sure that they remain slaves. Now, that Southern flag, there are places where it is acceptable. If that flag is flying over a Confederate, what? Battleground? No. A Confederate capital? No, there's no such thing. There's no Confederacy. The only places that it is acceptable to have that flag is in a fucking museum or a cemetery specifically for that regiment. That flag does not represent any nation that ever existed. That flag represents only racism and tyranny. And no matter how much you racist fucks want to say it's for states' rights, bless their heart, that just shows what fucking pieces of shit you are. Now, by the time that this man was shot, and mind you, this is 2015, and these racist cops withheld all of the evidence that they could. The first body camera didn't come out till when? 2016. At first, there was just one body camera, right? Well, now it turns out that there were 3 body cameras from police officers, and there were 2 more bystanders filming the whole thing. And we get to see edited goddamn versions where they magically stop it when the officer starts screaming, he's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. Like, if they stop it, then people will go, oh, well, you know, they magically stopped it where they're saying he's got a gun, so obviously they're the media is trying to hide the fact that this guy had a gun and he was trying to kill the cops. No, he didn't have a fucking gun. Now, in addition to that, there is also the video at that place, that business itself. 6 videos altogether, and I have looked at all 6, and I have not found this fucking gun. Where is this fucking gun? When the one officer asks the other officer about the gun, he says it's in the car. I'm going to tell you about a guy named Brandon Jepson. He went to school in Torrington, Wyoming here to become a police officer. He's the one who taught me about police interrogation techniques and torture techniques and explained to me why it is that they call it pain compliance instead of torture. If you call it pain compliance, you can get away with it. Now, at the time that this man was killed, the police in South Carolina, in 5 years' time, had literally fired at over 200 people, and not one officer was ever in trouble for it. In that 5-year period, until this man was murdered, no officer who murdered a black man, or murdered anyone else for that matter, got in any goddamn trouble for it. Oh, well, now that George is gone, I'm going to read his shit. At least this time. South. Any excuse that they can make. During the Civil War and prior to the Civil War, we had these things in America, and I'm not sure if many of you have heard of this, especially if you're a racist from the South. Y'all seem to really pride your culture on racism. That's part of the reason that anytime anybody else in the United States hears your fucking accent, your Southern accent, we automatically detract 20 IQ points. That's right off the top, no matter what. And that's anywhere that you go. And the reason for that is because of your continued insistence on racism and continued insistence that you're the victims. No, the black people that you held as slaves were the victims. You got your asses kicked because you did evil shit to human beings. And now, 200 years later, you're all still a bunch of whiny ass bitches bleeding out your fucking manginas. You're gonna flood the whole South red with your bloody fucking manginas. What you need to do is go down to Home Depot, get yourself a box of industrial strength fucking man pawns, and stuff that shit, you little bitch. Meanwhile, while you little bitches are making excuses 200 years later, you're still sore fucking losers. And you're still blaming everything on everyone else. When you murder a black man, it's the black man's fault. When you murder homeless people, it's the homeless people's fault. What's the difference between the South and everywhere else in America? Everywhere else in America, it's actually pretty decently proportioned. Why? Because the cops work for rich people who don't want to see poverty. No matter what the law says on paper, that is what the law is all about. Public opinion, especially the rich. And what do the rich care about? What do pretty, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed girls think? Now, when I was telling y'all about the human trafficking that goes on in Boulder, yes, human trafficking is a very real thing in the United States. Police are involved, and so are the upper echelon of our great country, our great America. Thank you, Donald Trump. Donald Trump tells the police that they don't have to treat people like human beings when they're being arrested. With all due respect, you're assuming our guilt. We are innocent until proven guilty, which means that torturing us as if we had done something wrong is against the Constitution, Donald fucking Trump, you goddamn traitor. And those of you poor people who want to support Donald Trump, whatever. You fucking do your own goddamn thing, because at this point, it's pretty fucking obvious that Donald goddamn Trump isn't the problem. It's pretty fucking obvious that this shit has been going on since long before he was president. Y'all want to pretend that it ended with the Civil War, and it didn't. Where did the opening shots to the Civil War happen? Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry. You know who it was that started the revolution in order to free black people? It was a white guy. It was literally a white guy going, hey, these are human beings and I'm willing to lay down my life for them. And you know what? He fucking did. You're right, you know, it was John Brown. John Brown is a motherfucking hero. When you talk about Black History Month, we're not talking about Black history. Most of that month, here's the reason we call it Black history. We robbed them of their heritage. Most of the black people in America don't have any fucking clue what country their ancestors came from. That's why we call it Black history. Now, the rest of us, most of us white people, we can say, oh, well, I'm from Germany. You're not from Germany. You were born in fucking Kansas, dumbass. It's just that German and Dutch immigrants, the majority of Nebraska, Kansas, Wyoming, Colorado, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, the majority of the people who migrated to these areas were Dutch and German. So I get to hear from people here in America about how they're 100% German. I'm like, Germans aren't even 100% German, dumbass. What, you want to be proud of being inbred? God damn, that ain't too bright. Now, whenever you hear these Southerners spouting this shit, I want you to keep in mind that the newspapers from prior to the Civil War, through the Civil War, and after the Civil War are all archived on both sides, both the North and the South. Why is it the South was able to use the Bible as their excuse to own slaves and to keep that hold for so many years? Because that argument started with the Declaration of Independence. Many people would not sign the Declaration of Independence as long as black people were allowed to be free. They didn't see black people as people back then, and they taught their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Why? Some of these people might have been dead by the time that their great-grandchildren came about. Isn't that possible? Yes, but because they taught their children, those children taught their children, those children taught their children. Now, I want to tell you about the Southern accent. After I got all my teeth taken out, well, it started to make sense. Much like in Nazi Germany at the end of World War II, where they mostly just had old men and boys to fight. Pretty much everybody between the age of 20 and 60 was fucking dead. Same thing in the South. So after the war, we got a whole bunch of people. Now, mind you, where's the mention of the thick Southern accent? Don't get me wrong, there was an accent there beforehand, but it's a lot different and a lot more highly mentioned after the war. Why is that? Teeth. We got a bunch of little kids being raised by their grandparents. Their grandparents ain't got no teeth. So a lot of words that you find difficult to say without teeth, you change it a little bit. It sounds a little different. And you can't enunciate as well, so you have to talk slower. That's why people say, man, I can't stand listening to them Southerns talk. They just talk so slow. And I'm going, why the hell are these people talking so slow? Well, the reason that they're talking so slow is because that's how they were taught to speak. Are you out here, man? You goddamn right. Does that sound like an accent? It's fake as fuck now, isn't it? Now, a lot of the things that I've gone through in my life that I try to explain to you, I'm telling you from personal experience. A lot of Southerners, especially, have the opinion that if they didn't see it, it didn't happen. And if they looked away, it didn't happen. Here's what I want you guys to do. Whenever a police officer is shot, I want you to pretend it didn't happen. Not only that, anytime that a police officer is shot, I want you to do what the Southerners do, which is make excuses. My computer just froze up. Lovely. I have severe panic attacks over the sheer quantity of abuse that I've taken. And yes, albeit much of that abuse as I was growing up was at the hands of minorities. The fact is, most of those people that we were allowed to finish the fight, we became friends. Why is that? Because men cannot be friends without having a mutual disrespect for one another. Why is that? That's the way we're taught. If you continually break up the fight, it's just going to continue until they're allowed to finish and find out which one is the dominant male monkey pig dog. Now, for me, I was very rarely the dominant male monkey pig dog because I hate violence. Now, the other thing is, all of this stuff that I get to hear out of white people from the South, all of these excuses that they have why black people deserve it, they just assume and blanket the whole group. Just like most of the nation does with the homeless. And just like many of these people who support Black Lives Matters do with white people. You can go to a Black Lives Matters march. I've been to several and I've taken part. And you can hear black people screaming about how terrible white people are. Meanwhile, they have a white person on either side of them supporting them. 600,000 white people. You want to talk about how much white people hate you? That's right. 600,000 white Yankees hated you so much that they laid down their lives so you could be free. Many of those people were Irish and got off the boat, or German and got off the boat. And as soon as they got off the boat, they were handed a rifle and a uniform and said, "Congratulations, you're an American, go shoot some Southerners." Jesus, exactly. If we don't look at it, it'll go away. That is very stupid. If my daughter tells me she's being raped by her dad and I look away, did my daughter do wrong? Or did I? And in that scenario, who did worse harm to that child? The father who raped that child? Or the mother who allows that father to get away with it? So the victim is forced to normalize, and that father gets to rape that child again and again and again and again. I love my daughter. I would never allow anyone to do something like that. But then when it does happen, when it does actually happen, Your words don't fit your mouth. Like many of you say, man, if I encountered a child molester, I'd cut his balls off, I'd cut his dick off, I'd put a bullet in his head. It only costs 50 cents for a bullet, so on and so forth. I didn't say that I would go out and kill these people, did I? No. I said I would expose them. And I have. Now, we've also seen time and again with all of these situations, not just with rape, not just with racism, how, depending on which group it is, you're going to pick out the worst case scenario from the people that you want to present yourself as against, and you're going to present the best case scenario for you. Like comparing that white guy who got away with a slap on the wrist because, first of all, that white kid was rich, okay? He was rich. Isn't that white boy that the Boulder Police Department killed was on the news? He was a college student. He was white. While Zaid Atkinson really didn't get what I feel is a fair deal. He got $125,000, and he wasn't even assaulted by the police. That's the kind of stuff they pull in Colorado. We'll pretend that Colorado is part of this great Southern hatred for black people by turning things that are anti-homeless issues and pretending that they're race issues. Zaid Atkinson was not assaulted. He was never assaulted. Now, the man I started talking about on this video, many of y'all might have guessed his name already. I'll give you a hint. His last name is Sterling. The police assaulted the shit out of him, but where was that? A southern state. That's in South Carolina. The same South Carolina that had over 200 police shootings in a 5-year period where not a single officer was held accountable. Where not a single officer ever got in trouble for what he did. And after the murder of Mr. Sterling, one of the officers was fired temporarily, and the other officer was given a 3-day paid vacation. 3 days for instigating a situation and murdering an unarmed man and then trying to plant a gun on him. Brandon Jepson explained to me he called it a throwaway, and they teach this in Torrington, Wyoming, by the way. In criminal justice class, this is where you learn to become a police officer, right? Yeah, here's what they taught Brandon Jepson. How not to get the municipality that you work for sued. Who it is that you can get away with victimizing and who you can't. How to harm somebody when you believe that they're guilty and you have to take them down in public. If they're not being combative, the first thing you need to do is raise your voice so that other people around you can hear you. You get very hostile towards this person. You slam them on the ground. You put them into pain compliance so they are now in fight or flight. It's actually fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. As a male, you don't get fawn. That one goes right out the window. And if you're not a pretty female, that goes out the window in most cases. Freeze? Yeah, that's not going to happen when they're trying to break your fucking arm. When they're trying to attach your elbow to your neck. And then they are taught to scream the words, "Stop resisting! Stop resisting!" And this is seriously the world we live in. Hello, Miss Zombie. It's good to see you again. Or Mr. Zombie. I honestly can't tell because the picture is very small, and I know a couple of carries that are dudes, and I know a couple of carries that are women. I personally don't think of it as a multi-gender name, but also because I know about the same amount of men named Carrie as I do women. It is kind of a multi-gender name. My name, Shawn, S-H-A-W-N, with my spelling. I know more women with their names spelled that way than men. Now, I know a lot of you are all like, no, that's Shauna. Shauna. No, it's not Shauna. It's just Sean. There are lots of women named Sean. Just like there's lots of women named James. How odd is that? And I've known a lot of men named Kelly. A lot of people consider Kelly a men's name. I was raised believing it was a women's name. Now, we're not just dealing with this. Now, first of all, a lot of y'all might think that I'm racist because I talk about how racist this whole situation is, and that many of the things being brought up and said by people from Black Lives Matters, they're doing the same thing that the KKK is doing. So how is that okay? By ignoring the plight of others because they're not the same color of skin as you are doing exactly what it is that you're bitching about. That goes for black people, white people, Hispanic people, native people. I don't really give a fuck what color. Well, all right, that doesn't go for native people. I am not going to. I'm not going to do that. The Native Americans, through all of this, have taken a back seat to all of this, have watched this go on, and have continued to take their back seat and see their loved ones being murdered, being killed. But they're taking that back seat. Why is it that they're taking that back seat? Because they're hoping that if they take that back seat and these black people are able to get a change that I'm trying to get, a change that the Native Americans are trying to get. We're hoping and praying and giving all of the support that we can to these black folks, even if we don't agree with them. We're at least spreading the word about the atrocities. We don't have to agree about the agenda. We don't have to agree about any of that. We don't have to agree with any of the bullshit opinions that people have afterwards. What we need to focus on is the facts. Between a racist asshole spouting a bunch of ignorance and somebody who actually did their research, I'd rather listen to somebody who did their research. And you're right, Cary Grant. Also Jim Carrey, but that's his last name. To this day, we get to hear the South make excuses why, no matter what, no matter how blatantly obvious it is that the police outright murdered a man simply because of his color. Southerners are never going to admit it. If you don't admit it, it never happened. It's like that song by Shaggy. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. No matter how many times you say it, your girl walked in on you fucking another girl. You can tell her 1,000 times that it wasn't you. She's standing right there watching you do it. Taking Shaggy's advice in that situation is not going to improve your situation. It's going to make it much worse. Now, the thing is that the whole nation, now at this point, is being held hostage by the South. Dan is but a dream. Be safe. Do I hate all Southerners? Fuck no. How could I? I don't know every Southerner. But I do know that from the cross section that I got to witness in Virginia and North Carolina, yeah, you don't have to meet everybody in that state to realize that it's racist as fuck when every establishment that you walk into is segregated. And I do mean that. No, they don't have signs that say black area, white area. People already know. They already know that it's assigned seating. Black people sit there, white people sit there. You made them take down the signs, but you didn't change their minds. So Then I get to hear a lot of Southerners saying that all of these other people are making excuses, how they're sore losers, how we are hating on them and their culture. Let me tell you something. Having that flag, I would compare it to the Nazi flag flying over modern Germany today. The Nazi party is gone. The Nazi regime is gone. That system of government is gone. It no longer exists. Germany is a completely different Germany because they have different hierarchy. Now, I would compare that flag to if modern Germany was flying the Nazi flag above their Capitol building. But the fact is that the Nazi flag was a national flag. That Confederate battle standard, that Tennessee battle standard, is not a national flag. It's not even a state flag. And you believe that we should honor the dead more than the living. We should respect the dead, and that is your excuse and justification for the killing of these black people. You kill them for hundreds of years for the color of their skin, and then when the flags come down, you go, see, they deserved it. They took the flag down. They. So you want to pretend there wasn't white people involved. You want to pretend that the Civil War, white people weren't involved. It was all white people against black people. Is that the narrative that you want to feed us? No matter how many times you say, oh no, we were fighting over states' rights, you were fighting over one state's right. And you already declared that you guys were going to be sore losers. If you didn't get what you wanted in the election, you were going to throw a tantrum like a child and go fucking kill people. Is it surprising that the opening shots of that war came from the North? It didn't just come from the North. It was an attack on a Northern armory. Why did they attempt to break into that armory? So that they could arm slaves, so that slaves could fight back. And ever since the Civil War, the laws and the police have manipulated to the point that a black man can't have a gun, not even legally. If he gets seen with a gun, he will be shot by police. Unless there are white people there with guns as well, standing next to him, declaring loud and proud, you shoot him, and hell is breaking loose. Now, one of those things that I saw where there was armed men protecting businesses, it was very specifically outside of a tobacco store. And in one of these anti-police groups, now mind you, if the police fuck up, yes, absolutely, by all means. But this person was Asian, obviously not even a very good English-speaking Asian. And they wanted to type that this picture, let me explain to you what's in the picture first. There are 3 white guys and 3 black guys, all with rifles. They didn't even point it at people. They didn't have to. Just the fact that they had them was enough. Now, although it was black people and white people working together, which is exactly what we need. This person who is trying to spread racial hate and discontent cut the black people out of the picture and typed up a whole bunch of stuff about how this is the KKK and these people are carrying military-grade rifles to murder black people. Oh no. Matter of fact, that business was owned by who? Was it owned by a white guy? No matter how much you want to lie, no matter how much you want to hide behind etiquette, fuck etiquette. Fuck etiquette. In Nebraska, we got to deal with etiquette. Etiquette is a matter of law here. You cannot say cunt, snatch, fuck, bitch, whore, or any other curse word, including shit, in front of a woman or a child in this state. You can say it in front of a man. You can't say it in front of a woman. But what if a woman says it? What if a child says it? Meanwhile, the things that I am pissed off about are actual crimes, are actually at least 300 of my loved ones, at least 300 people that I care about who are corpses now because of bad laws nationwide. In the South, yeah, they mostly focus on brown and black people. The rest of the nation, it's brown people, black people, and anybody who's homeless. If a police officer in Colorado, and especially in Boulder, if he's got a choice between harassing a black man who looks like he might play basketball for CU, they're not going to bother him. Matter of fact, if that black man does actually rape somebody, those officers are going to cover for him because they're trying to guarantee that the Boulder municipality does not get sued. But that doesn't matter if he's black. They'll do that for the exact same thing for a white college student, just as they cover up the sheer quantity of situations like with Christopher Weaver, where he was attacked by 6 college students who tried to bash his skull in with a rock. He spent months in the hospital and the police wouldn't investigate it. Why? Because that was post JonBenét Ramsey. No, I don't agree with your narrative, most of you, with the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't agree with your narrative, but that doesn't mean that I don't sympathize with your cause. I absolutely see these things happening to black people. I grew up with black people more than white people. Most of the white people that I interacted with all growing up were staff members or foster parents. In California, I got to go to my very first mainstream school. Now, down there, it's not mostly black folks in Huntington Beach, it's mostly Hispanics. And many of them are racist because they're taught to be. White people are the enemy, white people are the enemy, white people are the enemy. No, most of us are on your side. Most Southerners were on your side during the Civil War. They fought that war because they were forced to. It was their lives. Either you go kill these northern white people so that we, the generals and the president, can own slaves, or we'll kill you. That was the choice that the Southerners had at the time. And you can go back through those archived newspapers. It's not history is written by the victor in this case. All of this is well documented by both sides. When it comes to the South, yeah, we got a reckoning coming. The South will rise again? No, the fuck it won't. Y'all were bitches in the 1800s and you're still bitches today. You blame the victims. That is the Southern way. You victimize the victims. That is the Southern way. You fuck children. That is the Southern way. How many Southern states, just in the last decade, have tried to lower the legal age of consent? Some of these places, the legal age of consent is 13 years old. 13. I met Natalie Bollinger when she was 13. Even when she was 18, I couldn't imagine having sex with her. But in the South, it's part of their culture. That's not culture. That's disgusting. I mean, that's disgusting. Bless your heart. Fucking bitches. Ariel Sharon. He was a Jew who became president. Rape culture, exactly. And I have been speaking out against rape culture since I was a kid. Why? Because I was raped as a kid. But those things don't happen to boys. Boys have to just shut up. Boys just have to man up. That's why at the age of 15, boys start killing themselves at 5 times the rate of girls. Girls are more likely to get sympathy, more likely to get help, more likely to get men who are going to go harm other men. All they have to do is say the right words. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but it should be investigated before people are harmed as if they're guilty. And it's not an investigation if you only look at one side. Like the police, the media, and, well, of course, the general public. See, while Black Lives Matter has a lot of public support, the homeless still do not. Now, I'm going to explain to you the Roman rental agreement, because that is the culture and the set of laws that was made in the South after the Civil War to guarantee that black people became slaves once again, immediately after the war. The Roman rental agreement. In Roman times, you really didn't have any rights, and you could be kicked out at any point in time. And through most cultures, the right thing to do is not try to make a profit. In most cultures, they consider taking more than you need a mental illness. You're sick in the head if you take more than you need. You are sick in the head if you try to fleece a fellow human being and take from them more than you should. If you already own a house and you bought that house, you're paying $200 a month to own that house, and you're charging a black family $800 a month to live there. That's how the Roman rental agreement worked. Then there's also the you're not allowed to own property unless your father or grandfather owned property. That is also part of the Roman rental agreement. Now, then there's the laws that were created specifically to exploit the shit out of that. They made every aspect of being homeless illegal. Now, mind you, if you were in the South and you were a slave and the war just ended, you were either homeless or you were lynched. Probably both. The population of black people in the South shrank by over half at the end of the Civil War. And that wasn't because all the slaves were moving north. It's because they were hanging from telegraph poles all the way to Charleston. All the way to Charleston. Now, when it comes to the rape culture, no, I'm not trying to blame it on all women, but the people that I see fanning the flames of this rape culture the most are women. He's so dreamy, he's so good looking. It must be okay. Women typing that they wish that Jeremy Meeks would rape them. Women that I personally know saying that they wish Johnny Depp would rape them. Women that I personally know who tell me, you know, John, I respect that you never try to have sex with me when I'm drunk because I consider that rape. And no man should do that. And if a man did that to me, I would call the cops on him. Jamie Curtis said that, and she had sex with at least 6 people while she was drunk, while I was in the house. How many of them did she call the cops on? She never once called the cops on them. She was completely full of shit. Now, many of the women that I know, whether or not the man is a rapist or a new boyfriend, depends on whether or not he's good looking when you wake up. Now then, there's many of you who you woke up with a good-looking guy and you're super excited. You woke up with a good-looking guy. You want to keep him. You want him to be your boyfriend, but you were just a one-night stand. He's got a girlfriend or a wife. But because he's good-looking and because he had sex with you and because you've got that on the brain now you become a stalker to this man. And what's worse is that you can play victim when you stalk this man and destroy his life and destroy his marriage and destroy his family. Don't get me wrong. What he did was wrong. He shouldn't have cheated on his wife. I can agree with that. But you destroying his life because he won't be with you? That's a different kind of sickness altogether. Train! When it comes down to it, there are a lot of guys that are on your fault or on your side, ladies. But you need to speak up. When you tell a man that you need a rescue from an abusive man, and a good man comes to rescue you, first of all, you shouldn't have called a good man. All right? You're just going to abuse him and go back to the man who beat you. You need to call the cops on the son of a bitch so he doesn't get to do it to somebody else. You need to take him to court so he doesn't get to do it to somebody else. But then at the same time, I understand why you're afraid. I've spoken out about what happened with Teresa Massilia in Boulder County, where she defended herself against her rapist. They charged her with assault, but never charged her rapist. Then there's Christine Kelly. I'm sorry. I don't enunciate names well, and I'm not trying to be an asshole. But she was quite the opposite. This also in Boulder County. She went to turn in her rapist, and they charged her with filing a false report. Because according to them, because she didn't fight back hard enough, she wasn't raped. Now Chelsea is fucking tiny. That's Chelsea Aiken. She is tiny. I mean, she's about the same size as Natalie and Alicia. She's skinnier though. Also, she's a lot older than when I met her. She's getting pretty close to 30, and she still literally looks 12. And when I was talking about fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, I didn't bring up freeze or fawn because those weren't options that I had. She, as a pretty girl, does have the fawn option. But the other thing is, that also allows the predator to get away. He says, oh, well, I thought she wanted it. No, you came at her aggressively. You were physically harming her. She was afraid you were going to kill her. And she had to pretend to like it in the hopes that that would save her fucking life. And then we've got all these guys who actually committed these crimes who are getting away with it. And we've got guys who didn't commit these crimes who are being treated like they're the ones who committed these crimes. Now, why is that? Looks. We get to hear about how all men are pigs. Meanwhile, women, obviously, and no, not all of them, just like not all men are into sex. I'm not into sex. I think it's gross. A lot of women that I know think it's gross. However, women have sexual urges too. It's not just a man thing. Also, circumcision. I didn't ask to be circumcised. Did you know that an erect penis, whether circumcised or uncircumcised, looks the same? Except for the fact that there is a dry ash mark where they circumcised you. Lovely. Now, the chain gangs, when they made it illegal to be homeless, and the North actually introduced the law, the 13th Amendment, well, That meant that every homeless black person was now a criminal and could be put into chain gangs and forced to work for free for the state under the lock and key of exclusively white guards. Mind you, this is literally the exact model that Adolf Hitler took. He took the American example of the chain gang, and he cited that. He literally said that himself. How fucked up is that? Meanwhile, all of the things that we talk shit about as far as Nazi society goes, and no, I'm not defending Nazis. All the things that we hated them for, we're doing to our own citizens now. It's not right now. It wasn't right then. It wasn't right after the Civil War. It wasn't right before the Civil War. And just because the Bible has a set of instructions in it on how you are supposed to treat your slaves does not mean that owning another human being is acceptable. You can suck my dick. Oh, yeah, and fuck that flag. If you're in the South and you encounter one of those flags on any state or federal property, wipe your ass, take a picture of that crusty, nasty fucking stain, and post it to my Facebook, please. We'll see how many of these goddamn redneck Peckerwood motherfuckers we can piss off.